One day, all 948 of the draft picks are over at PNC Park, putting on Pirates jerseys, throwing out the ceremonial first pitches, and all that other stuff. The next day, it's NHL free agency, which in Pittsburgh will mean ... Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Yeah, the draft picks were taken all over. They had a photo op up in Cranberry, then again at PNC Park. Everybody smiled and spoke all the happy stuff. And amid that, what we really wanted to find out was what Kyle Dubas had to say about today, July 1, noon, opening of free agency. And I got to tell you, I have never heard an executive in any sport be more forthright than Dubas was on this day, on this subject, by stating flat out, you can pretty much forget it. He all but ruled out acquiring anybody over 30, acquiring anybody that would cost more than $5 million. And if you pick one of the statements apart, acquiring anybody that wouldn't just be someone who'd provide a push to the young players that they actually plan to utilize. So what I hear when something like that's spoken is, I'm going to look really hard for the next Anthony Beauvillier. That's what we're after. We want Beauvillier. In fact, we'll take 4 or 5 Beauvilliers. They can come in here. They can either provide some sort of parachute if a certain kid either gets hurt or doesn't work out, or he can sit up in the press box with you guys, or he can be traded for another 5th or 6th round pick. This is not exciting. This is not, I'm sure, what anybody'd want to hear. But here, too, as with a lot of stuff that Dubas has done in recent months, we're on the same page, meaning his view and the way I see it. Because you do have to get young. You do have to let these players get on the ice. You do have to let them take on important roles. But on top of all that, or actually I should say underneath all of that, they need to earn it. They need to win their spots within reason. And I'm sure they get all the tiebreakers. But you can't just have somebody come into camp, stink on ice, literally and figuratively, and then just say, all right, kid, you're on the power play. Let's see what you got. No, that wouldn't work anywhere. But I've also got to add, you know what I'm about to bring up, it also wouldn't help these kids or anybody's progress individually or as a collective if the team stinks on ice, or if there aren't very many examples of how things should be done. Which is why I will reiterate for only the gazillionth time that this isn't the summer to be parting with Bryan Rust and or Rickard Rakell. Erik Karlsson's in a different bracket. But those two up front, for all the reasons I've already laid out, not going to do it again, it had better take something seismic to move Dubas. You want to know something? It sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, I know more about the free agent market because of the calls we get on our veteran guys of teams saying, the market is nuts. We might have more interest in doing a deal or a trade. So we're going to evaluate everything. We're going to do what's best for the Penguins. But I mean, in one of those players' cases specifically, I mean, it means a lot to the team. He's been a part of the team for the 15 years since he was drafted. So unless it's something that is, blows us away in terms of what it returns, then it can very easily be looked at to help us return to contention. That'd be a tough one. But we've got lots of calls on him. He's a great player, signed, but he's also a massive member of the Penguins. So we'll continue to be open for business, but the price will be very high.
Okay, so free agency prices are expected to be just over the top outlandish. So in turn, and you heard Dubas say this just now, people are looking more toward trades. That's where, if you're Dubas, you have to make sure that your price is equally over the top outlandish for either Rust or for Raquel. If you get that, and if you get the return that, as Dubas himself stressed, accelerates the Penguins toward getting where they want to get, hey, that's business. My wariness throughout this process has not been clinging to the old guys or anything to that effect. Parenthesis here, not that either Rust or Raquel is old. They just basically turned 30. End parentheses. Rather, it's about ensuring that the franchise doesn't just go careening off a cliff. Nothing good comes of that. Also, nothing good comes of a GM who will make rebuilding type moves just for the sake of rebuilding type moves. So it's heartening to hear Dubas state about as plainly as you can state it that he's not interested in doing that. At the same time, he has to keep his door ajar on everything. And this is where the people who don't cover the team, the people who just sit on their phones all day long talking to agents, will intentionally misread, misinterpret, or worse, just twist a stance like this into something that makes them look like they've got some big hot scoop. When they'll hear from an agent, and I'm going to repeat, this is who they're talking to and almost nobody else. They don't come to games. They don't come to rinks. When they hear, hey, Pittsburgh, everybody's available except Sid, they go, woo. Nobody checks into anything because they don't know anybody to check with, because they don't know anybody with the team, because they don't cover the team. The reality, and I would hope this is obvious to anybody who's listening on a regular basis to a show that's called Daily Shot of Penguins, is that Dubas absolutely, unequivocally, unquestionably does not engage in discussions regarding Sid, whereas anyone else who would call on another player would at least get him to listen. Wouldn't go anywhere. If it were related to a player he genuinely wants to keep or genuinely values, it would go somewhere in a big hurry if they asked about Erik Karlsson, Ryan Graves, Tristan Jarry, and a couple others. But that's only true of every GM in every sport. In fact, most GMs will tell you there is no such thing as untouchable. That's one of the most common phrases you'll hear from any exec anywhere. Pittsburgh has Sid. Therefore, there is an untouchable. It doesn't mean that the rest are being shoved out to the curb with the rest of the trash. The approach remains solid. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Ace, who says, DK, I'm very confused by the Penguins not qualifying Phil Tomasino, and I'm hoping for your input on this. I'm going to read through all of the names that were not qualified by the NHL deadline for teams to do so with restricted free agents or pending restricted free agents. Tomasino was one of them. Rivas Ansons was another. Emil Bemstrom, Connor Dewar, P.O. Joseph, and Taylor Gauthier. Yeah, the only two that would be a surprise out of that group would be Tomasino and Dewar, I'd think. But I'd also point out that Dubas acknowledged that the Penguins are still in contact with the representatives for both of those players, and those are the only two that he mentioned in that regard, which, while he didn't elaborate, would strongly suggest that Penguins wouldn't mind having either of them back, but they'd want to have them back at their price. So if you're either one, Tomasino or Dewar, you don't really have much to lose by seizing upon unrestricted free agency and testing out whether any of the other 31 franchises might want you. for a better price or maybe a better situation. I have some lukewarm, not all that firmly formed feelings on both of these players. I saw stuff from Tomasino late in the season, and he and I had a talk about it where it looked like he's really been making some progress toward becoming a more complete player, more of a 200-foot, get a little grittier, take care of your own end type of player. He's a bit of an odd case in that he has some skill, and you see it at times. You see the finish, you see some of the flash, including his ability to just flat out get up ice. And you also saw, and I thought this was important too, that he wasn't exactly floored by playing with someone like Evgeny Malkin. He didn't shrink from it. He just played right alongside Gino. Gino liked having him too. Just want to throw that in. But I don't know that anybody would watch Tomasino and think to themselves, he's going to score so much in this league that he's not going to have to do the other things. That just wouldn't be practical to operate with that as a premise. So he's 24 years old. You want to keep him around for another year and see what he's got? Yeah, you can do that, but you don't have to necessarily pay for it. Dewar, this one's different. He's not going to score. He's able to pop one or two at times that'll have you thinking, kind of like in the Danton Heinen way, like, whoa, hey, what if, ... And then you go, no. But here, this is almost the opposite of the Tomasino thing. Dewar looks more like a guy who is fit to be a third or fourth liner, and yet he doesn't have that to enough of an extent. And he himself, when I brought this up in a talk we had late in the season, will tell you that even he doesn't really identify himself as one or the other. He just told me he's, a guy who's done a little bit of everything, and he's always been viewed that way. So, okay, if Dubas can keep one, if he can keep both, that's all right. I don't know that I would be super set off in either way related to either player. One other thing to mention on this note is that one player was extended. That was Vasily Ponomarev. Don't take that one seriously at all. He's signed a 3-year deal to play in the KHL. And all this does, extending a qualifying offer, is allows the Penguins to retain his rights into perpetuity. So if he turns into the next Russian hockey god, he'll have the option to become a Russian hockey god in Pittsburgh again someday. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow, the Beauvillier episode.